Okay, I got that done. All right, who's here? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4, I guess. 4 people. Hi, everybody.
My AirPods won't connect.
Should probably connect it to your phone.
Hi, Jenna. Don't worry about it. I know you're eating. I didn't even mean to catch you when you're eating. Sorry about that.
Why is this guy?
Hi, Jenna.
How's it going?
Okay, how are you?
I'm having a snack.
Yeah, good. Good for you.
Okay.
It won't cut.
Oh, it's flipped for you guys. There you go.
I need to have it on. No one's here.
Yes. Okay. We'll let people roll in. We have 7 people right now. For those of you who are early, can you do me a favor and grab a, you'll probably need 2 sheets of paper and then just any writing utensil for the exercises that we're gonna do. That way it makes time a little bit easier. Hi, Allison. I can't hear you, but I assume you said hi.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello.
Hello.
What's this activity we're doing?
We're going to be doing, I don't think we're doing 2 activities, which is 2 of the 3 steps for applying to the REU. But I'll get into that in a second. Okay. Dude, man, you guys are really good. You're all early. I'm not gonna lie. If I went to like a webinar thing, I'd always be like 10 minutes late, only because I'm doing other things. All right. Real quick, can I get you guys to do a thumbs up reaction if you were here at the last session for the REU, about what's an REU? Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Sam. All right, let's see. That way I know a little bit about who was here last time. So again, if you were here last time, thumbs up. If not, don't worry about it. But just want to know what's going on. Thank you. Alrighty. Got Suling in. Keaton, Tony. Nice to see you again, Keaton. I think we saw you last quarter, but it's nice to see you again. And last meeting. Does anybody, this is probably kind of weird, Keaton, but did people ever tell you you look like Logic? You don't get that? Damn it. Okay, just me then. My bad. All right. Let's do 4 more minutes. Again, if you just came in, do me a favor, grab 2 pieces of paper and any writing utensil. You'll need them in a second.
This is gotta be awkward for him.
There you go. Thank you. Okay. Oh, you can see my mouse. Okay, good. So after this meeting, for those of you who are here right now, if you go to our website and you ever just want to get back to something or you need to leave early and want to see what happens, you can always come up here to meetings. And every meeting we'll put in a new post here.
Don't be mean to me. I'm literally just asking, bro.
Every meeting we'll put in a new post here and it'll show you the resources we use. So all the slides will be here. Also samples that we'll show you, they'll be here. Okay. Again, 2 more minutes.
Sure we don't do any of that.
There's no software update or anything. There's not fucking connected.
All right. Susan, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Just so that I know everybody can hear me for introductions, Allison, Susan. Okay, 1 more minute here. Again, if you just came in, please grab 2 pieces of paper and any writing utensil you want. Preferably not a crayon, but anything else. You'd be surprised. I've seen somebody turn in, I think it was 5B. Somebody turned in 5B with like either a marker or a crayon. I don't remember, but it was really colorful and it wasn't a pen. It was, yeah. They finished it though. You know what? So.
Don't judge them for their writing utensils.
I won't. That's why I said whatever writing utensil you want. Preferably
You just
not.
did, you said.
I said
Yeah.
preferably not. I said I didn't say you have to not have one of those. You can if you want, but I'd prefer you didn't. All right, why don't we get started here? 505. Can we do real quick again? Can you do a thumbs up reaction if you were here at the last session? Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to see that you guys came back. And for those of you that weren't, don't worry about it. It's recorded. And you can always look back at it at the same place on our website under meetings. And let's get started with some quick introductions. Oops, somebody knew. 2 Annas. So real quick, get some introductions. Hi, my name's Alberto. I'm president of SPS. And some officers here are Allison and Subling. If you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick.
Sure, I can go. Hi, I'm Allison. I'm an events coordinator for SPS. Alberto, is there anything else you wanted me to say?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay, yeah.
And hi everybody, I am Siuling and I am also an officer for SPS and for WIPA as well.
All right, so I'm gonna get right. So I'm gonna get right into the slides right now. So if you guys can spotlight me, I'm gonna switch a bit back and forth. So if you want to spotlight me, then you could see the whole thing because I won't be sharing screen through Zoom. Okay. If you guys can all see that, just give me a thumbs up. Awesome. All right. It's nice to see them all lit up. So let's go over the very basic about an REU. We're going to do 3 different sections. We're going to do the essay prompts that every single REU application has. We're going to cover how to start a CV. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. Just TLDR is that it's a resume, but for academia. And then we're also going to do how do you approach somebody for a letter of recommendation. It can often be kind of scary to approach a faculty or somebody you're doing research with to say, hey, can you write something really nice about me to everybody else? And it might feel kind of weird at first, but you get used to it and it does help you a lot along the way. So let's start at the beginning for answering essay prompts. And right now we're just going to go over the very basic about what the writing process looks like and how you can chop down the pieces of writing this essay response to make it easier. It can be kind of scary to write it all at once and even scarier when it's due the next day. So let's make it a bit easier on ourselves. So at the beginning of an essay prompt, and I'll give you an example right now that we'll work through, but you always want to select out the keywords that you think the writer of that essay block wants you to keep note of. They're not going to tell you outright, here's the most important part of the question. So we need to discern that for ourselves and then write about it. A second good strategy that you want to do is just whatever you have in your mind, just write it down as much as you can and basically don't stop writing, even if it means you have to write filler words just to get thoughts on the page. It's one thing to just sit down for an hour and look at a blank page and just hope that something comes to you. It's another thing to just kind of nudge yourself into a position where you have to write for just a very short amount of time instead of having to dedicate a whole day or a week just getting down the initial ideas that may not be the best ideas you have, but at least to start at the very least. And that's what we're going to do right now. And once we do that and we have our initial and immediate thoughts, we kind of take out the pieces that we find valuable or that we think we can evaluate further and make them into some small paragraphs and eventually get to that essay. So just going bit by bit by bit to get to that eventual goal. And so this is when I ask you to take out that piece of paper I told you before. Just get one out for now, and we're going to do an example. So when you have that out, we're going to go over something called the Marilyn Stevens Award. Now, this is not an REU, but it is an opportunity for you to get research grants and money for either your regular schooling or for your specific research group. We're going over this because oftentimes the questions are universal, whether it be an REU, whether it be like this, a grant, or really an application for grad school. They're really all going to be about the same prompt, so you need to be really good at approaching it. And if you write it once and you write it well, then you can develop it further later, but you don't have to do much more than some tweaking. So we're trying to make it so that you set one, you write it, and every time somebody asks you the basic question, just send off your answer. Make it as easy as possible. So let's see. So the one that always comes up is describe yourself or describe your future. And whenever they talk about future, you can always drag on about, I really want to go to France one day, or I really want to, do this later in life. But usually they're talking about academia, and usually they're saying, what does this program have to do with you, and why does it help you on your way to some future goal? So right here we have, please describe your future education and career goals. Now let's go over that first step that we mentioned earlier. The first step is to think about those keywords that come in. The first ones that pop up are, well, A, education, and B, career. Everybody who's going to ask you in these REUs about an essay prompt is going to want to know what you want to do afterwards. They're happy that you want to apply. They're happy that you're interested. but most importantly, they want to know, how does my program benefit this student? And will they take full advantage of our opportunities? So at this moment, I'm going to ask you to just, on that piece of paper you have, sorry, on that piece of paper you have, just take, I'll count you down. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about keeping time. I'll stop you. I'll stop you for 8 minutes. Just write as much as you can to answer that question with these two main goals in mind. Okay? So I'll count you down from 10. Oh, let's do 5. Ready? Again, don't stop. Please don't stop once you start writing. If you need to write, I don't know what the heck is going on. I don't like that this guy's making me write. I don't, whatever you want to write down. It's totally fine. Nobody's going to read it but you. I'm not going to ask you to say it out loud. So just don't stop writing. Ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Just go. Whatever comes to mind, just go. Okay, it's a little early, but I'll have you stop right now. It's not the full 8 minutes, but I hope that you got some good stuff down there, at least an idea of something that you feel happy in writing. All right. So I'm not going to ask any of you to read. I'm not going to force anybody to share, but I want you to know that, you only spent, like 5 minutes talking about what you hope to do in the next however many, 5 years, 10 years. You spent 5 minutes just writing about that. And either it felt like not enough time, or it felt like way too much time to start thinking about the future, or anything in between. But you dedicated at least this much time. And a lot of times when people talk about getting ready for an REU, it's, I worked on this for 2 years. I wrote my essay 4 times over. I had it edited by 3 different professors, and it's like, all right, I didn't do any of that, but I did at least give heart and thought into it. And at least you could say that at least you took some time to just think about it, which is good. And we'll get to the other steps along the road. I didn't really get to talk about what the total outcomes of this event are. So let me just go over that now. At the end of this, I want you to at least have your first step. It's always hard to get the ball rolling because it feels like too much of a project. It feels like it'll take too much time. I have more important things to do right now. That's the whole 3 months away. I'll do it later. But the whole point is to just start the very beginnings of how to apply for an REU, and then over time refine it and get to work on it. All right then. So let's move on. So out of what you just written, you can start to see probably 1 or 2 themes come about. Maybe it was that you see that a lot of what you had to write about was more on the academic side, saying, I want to pursue a higher degree, and this is the kind of degree I want to do, and here's why. Or maybe it was more about, I just want to go into a career after this. It's the thing I know that I love. It's the thing I know that will make me happy, or that at least I'll feel fulfilled in, something like that. Whatever your theme is that you said the most about in your writing, take that. Don't take 3 sentences or longer. Just take 1 or 2 ideas that you see pop up and ask yourself some of these leading questions. What does this have to do with me? A lot of people want to do grad school, but why do I want to do grad school? What makes it important to me? What has influenced that decision for myself? And even further, what influenced that decision to then drive me to do an REU? Because it takes a lot to decide for yourself that that's something you want to do, and that's something worth risking time for. So whatever you wrote the most of, take the time tomorrow, the weekend. Again, it doesn't take much time. Take another 5 minutes whenever this week and just write that down, the next couple steps. If you guys have any questions in the middle of this, you can type chat. If you feel like you don't want to interrupt, you can interrupt, whatever you want to do. So if you feel like, this is a good start, but it wasn't necessarily going to answer all the questions, that's okay, because that's true. This isn't going to answer all the questions. Here's some more prompts that a couple other opportunities had. So we have the Ron Ruby Award is another grant that you could do, a NASA fellowship, which comes around every single summer. That's one of their questions that they put on their application every single year. Joby Aeronautics is an independent company. So if you're deciding to write more about career and you want to say something either in the interview, or you want to say something to them when they do have internships, they have internships every summer, same way. And they're going to ask you these questions. Here's one that they put up. And again, Marilyn Stevens Award is another grant that you could apply to. And again, this will all be available afterwards in that same page on the website. So if you want to go there, look at these questions, try it again at another time, go for it. Whenever you want to do it at your own pace. If 8 minutes is too much, 5 minutes. If 5 minutes is too much, 2 minutes, whatever. As long as it's above 0, you're good. Just try for a little bit just to think about it and reserve that time for it. All right. Now let's get moving. We're going to go to creating a CV. Now at the beginning of this, somebody asked me, Sam asked me, he's like, what the heck is a CV? And that's a fair question. I don't think anybody tells you when you start college. And they definitely don't tell you when you're about to start research. They just kind of ask at the interview, yeah, you have a CV to show me? It's like, this is the first time I've heard of it. I don't know what CV stands for, and I don't know why you want it from me. Which is okay. They're valid questions if you're not exposed to it, not a problem. So it's shorthand for curriculum vitae. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, and I've submitted one of these already. So there's that. Most of the time, you can compare this to what a resume is like in a job career setting. So if you want to apply for any type of work, or if you have applied for any type of work, you do a resume to show off skills that you have, accomplishments that you've done, and so forth. For a CV, everything is about the same except for the fact that it's geared more towards what you've done in an academic setting. So in this case, because let's say you go straight from high school into college, you're saying, well, I didn't do much work in a job, but I definitely took these classes. I definitely did this hands-on design. I definitely worked with a research group for 15 hours unpaid, but I want to at least show that to somebody. And that's the point of the CV, is that it kind of represents you as an academic and you as a student in this case, because you're going to be applying to an REU. Now, you might think, all right, I find the same types of writings in it and I do the same types of work in it. And, I know how to write a resume, so I could write a CV. It's a little bit different. So if there's some nuances you don't understand, totally fine. Don't worry about it. Again, you either want to get a separate piece of paper if you wrote a whole bunch on the last one, or if you want to keep the same one, you can do that too. Totally fine, but keep it out. And we're going to do this one together. So I know it sounds super simple. It sounds super basic, but just writing down these basic parts in the beginning make it a whole lot easier to continue the work later. So if nothing else, your first step is to write some contact info for you, and that'll be your name. Please use your school email address whenever you submit things to people. Don't put the AOL or a Yahoo or a Gmail or I think Hotmail's done. I think their server's shut down, but Hotmail, don't put any of that. Totally fine. Just put your UCSC email. And ever since last year, actually, or if you, sorry, some of you are coming from Cabrillo, you can put that too. And then transition over whenever. But as I was saying, so if you're in the UC system, UCSC, you get to keep your email indefinitely for the time being. That was decided last year. So for the time that you're doing right now and applying to REUs to the point where you're doing jobs, feel free to do that. Use your school email. Try and walk away from that other one that you have for all the junk mail and Netflix. Just don't use that one. So if nothing more, than start there. And the next step is to do the experience section, which right now might feel a little, to say the least, it's kind of not scary, but it kind of feels upsetting to feel like, hey, I didn't do very much, and so I can't put anything on here. That's just not true. It's just not true. Let's say you took a good one is like Astro 119. That's a programming course that you can take with us, and you can take that, I think, your first year. And on that one, you take a coding project to completion. You're presented with a problem, you're given the data, and you work through it as a team or as an independent person, and you solve the problem yourself. Yes, there's an answer at the end that they give you, whatever, but you got to do the problem solving and the real like head to the board kind of work that you did every single day. You can put that down there. Explain what the class was, explain how it shows value in a research setting. You had to do your own research, you had to do your own coding, you had to do your own problem solving when there was a bug. All of that's important. And so that's something that they encourage you to put on experience. Our own REU head here at UCSC encourages students to put that when they come from Cabrillo or they come from other colleges. Another thing you can do once you have some research experience, and that'll be after asking professors, hey, can I just join in or help in any way? You can put any of that work that you do, even if it doesn't feel like a lot. Let's say you're just doing data analysis, please put that on there. If you're just doing observation work and you're just taking notes for them to have data in the future, again, put that all on there. And volunteer experience is kind of a murky water you want to look at. You don't want to say necessarily that you did every single piece of volunteer work that you did, but volunteer for like, so NASA has a civil scientist project that they always have. They have it all across the year. That'll be volunteer work because you're not getting paid and you're not necessarily getting credit for it, but you're doing the science and you're doing the work to contribute to this larger project. And that's something you can put on there. So don't worry about putting that on there either. That's perfectly valid. You did work, you know, you did a good amount of analysis on it and you sent it off. You're part of a team. Maybe you might not be named in it, but you know, you did the work and that shows something.
What would be some volunteer experiences that we shouldn't write in our CV?
Well, I don't like, for me, I used to volunteer at UCSC has a food pantry, and you can volunteer there by handing out food to students or committing hours to that. Usually, if you have something else and you don't have a lot of space on your CV, you don't really need to put that in there because you have research or you have classes or you have other projects that you've done. So that's the type of work that, in the experience of talking with our own REU representatives and talking with REU representatives from other organizations, that's usually not at the top of their list that they want to look for. Yeah. Again, very important work, not discredited in any way, perfect for a resume, just not necessarily in this setting. Yeah. Okay. And then the last piece that you can put on there, these are all sections. And if you go to, again, that website and that link, that website in the meetings page, you'll see all of the different templates you can use. If you don't know how to start or you don't know what to look at, go touch those links and they'll send you to templates. Don't worry about the organization. That's one less thing you have to worry about. But the last part you want to put on is any presentations you've done. Oops. Any presentations you've done. So let's say once you've done research, you've completed a project or you're contributing in a project, and you can talk about what kind of poster sessions you've been a part of, what kind of talks you've given, what kind of publications you've done. And if that feels kind of like a worlds away, like I can't do a poster session, that's somebody else. That's somebody else's research. That's kind of difficult. Don't worry about that because we're actually going to be hosting one. So we're going to do the REU session. We're going to help you, get that actual research position with some of our faculty. And next quarter, we'll do a poster session. So if you don't feel like I can do that, don't worry, we'll help you get it. You're not gonna feel that way for long. Don't worry about it. And that's open to everybody, just so you guys know, for those of us who are visiting from not UCSC. Totally open to you too. Okay. Again, this is just the same thing brought over again, your education. You want to put, this is the format you kind of want to keep. So, where you got your degree, the date that you started, the date that you graduated. You can put in progress if you haven't finished it. Once you get further along and you've done a dissertation or you're submitted a thesis, you can do that as well. These are all things that you can put on under the education field. Oops, sorry, I lost something for a second there. Under experience, you can, again, put any work experience that you've done that has to do with the interest of either the research organization you want to join in or the research group that you are partaking in currently. That way they can kind of see a history of what kind of work you've done, who you've worked with, and also kind of keep those as references if they need to. And here are a few examples also of the presentations. So for Women in Physics, they have a conference for undergraduate women in physics. That's, what date is that this year, Allison?
It's the 22nd through the 24th, Friday through Sunday.
Okay. So yeah, so that happens every single year. If you're not ready or don't feel quite ready to present this year, you can go watch other people present any year that it happens and then present yourself at one of them. And that's easy enough to do. You register for the conference itself. Then they do a call out for anybody who wants to present. You submit the work that you've done and they give you a time slot. Is that about right for the process, Allison?
Sorry, I was reading the question in the chat and I did not hear what you said.
That's okay. Thank you for reading that, actually. I was asking the process for presenting at QWIP or any conference. It's you apply for it. You register for the conference. They put a call out for anybody who wants to do research, and then you put in the research you're doing, and then they review it to see if they give you a time slot.
Yep, that's about right. You submit an for QWIP at least. You submit an abstract after you've indicated on your thing that you want to present. You submit an abstract, and then they'll assign you to a slot, and then they'll tell you like kind of the format of your poster or talk session.
Yeah, so the process isn't, again, super. They're not going to gatekeep you for anything minute. They'll let you have that space to present what you're doing. Okay, let me get to that question. Are Arbor Division labs good to write on CV if you don't have much experience? Yeah, you can do the 133 and 134. And you can also do, there's an elective for observation, and I forgot what it's called. I can't remember.
136, the lab?
Is it, I can't remember if it's 136, but you would go to an observation deck and do overnight observations.
Yeah, 136.
There you go. There's another one if you're interested in Astro, you do 136. So yeah, any upper divs that you do that have to do with, again, lab work, feel free. You did an experiment. Again, yes, the answers were there. Yes, they reviewed your work. Yes, there was a predetermined outline for how you conduct the research. But you did the data analysis. You did the work to work on a team, oftentimes to collaborate on a project. You did all that. Completely valid. And there's nothing wrong with that, actually. It's something to be quite proud of that you got through those courses. Okay. This is the last section of our talk, which is, I'm not going to say the scariest, but it definitely was scary for me because I didn't know anybody. Oh, here we go. I'm going to read that real quick right after this, Lillian. But yeah, so definitely for me, it was the most scary experience because I didn't have any family who went to college. I didn't know anybody who went to college. I didn't have friends who went there. So talking to a professor was the scariest thing for me. These people are lecturing in front of 500 people rooms and feeling totally fine. And they're talking about their research like they've done it for their whole lives. And so you're like, hey, you want to let me on? I have no idea what you're doing, but it looks cool. And so this is, for some of you, the point at which it kind of starts to feel out of reach. Like I don't have much to say. I don't have much to offer. And I'm asking them to do this big thing. Don't worry. This is actually a big process for them as well. They oftentimes take in these people and recommend them and help them along the way. So don't feel bad about asking. If they say no, and I'm just going to put this up front, they might say no. That's okay. Forget it. Just move on. If they said no, fine. That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I move on. That's it. Don't feel like it's a reflection of you as a person, as a researcher, as anything. No, it's nothing to do with that. If they don't want to, they don't want to, for whatever reason. Okay, again, same piece of paper. Sorry for making you write a bunch. This is just so that you have it for later. I don't want you to say like, I didn't get anything out of it or I didn't do anything. I'm just making you do this so that you have it in hand for later. Okay, now I'll read Lillian's thing. Yeah, thank you, Lillian. That's the link for all the meeting pages that you'll see all this quarter, next quarter. They'll all be on there. So whenever you want to reference that, thank you. Okay, so now the actual process of getting a recommendation. It's not just going to be cold call every single faculty on the division or in my department and say, hey, you want to write me a letter of rec? Like if you don't know them, it's going to be weird. It's fine if one thing, they don't know you at the beginning, they have a lot of students, fine. But if you don't know them at all and it's just out of nowhere, probably don't ask them for a letter of rec. They won't write a good one. Okay, so places you want to look for. So professors that you've taken classes with. Yes, that includes the 5 series. If you took a class in 5 series, you did fairly well, and at least you showed interest in the topic or you went to office hours, anything like that, you can write that down. And if right now you're saying, well, I didn't do any of that, do it this quarter. Talk to professors, go to the office hours, ask them about the research they do. Do it now. Don't don't use I didn't do it before as an excuse to not do it now. It's okay. Another thing you could do is the faculty you've done research with. If you haven't done research with them, then you can skip over this part. But if you have, talk to them as your advisor, say that you're interested in this REU and that you'd like to have their opinion or their voice be on the letter of rec. Another thing is organizational leaders. So that could be, that's a little tough also, because you're getting into that volunteer gray area where it's like organization, like, can I do my local, again, my local volunteer location? You could do that, but usually if you do that, you want to have first an academic recommendation. So if they have space for 2 recommenders, do one for an academic setting and do one for anything else. If you want to do with the faculty, do with the faculty who knows you that you didn't necessarily take a class with, or do with the organizational leader. Again, but if you only have one option of one person, make it either the academic person that has a class that you've been in or the researcher you've done research with. Those 2 first. Once you have that, go nuts. Maybe don't do a family member, but do definitely somebody that you've done work with on one project or another. Ava, do you
Alberto?
have? Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. I do have a question. So I think most REUs ask for like 2, sometimes 3 letters of rec. If it's asking for 2, and I have one of the people is like a professor I do work with, and then the other one could either be like a professor I got a pretty good grade in their class, or I was thinking of maybe choosing my boss because he is like a physics faculty, but I'm working on the newsletter with him. Like, so should I pick the person I got like a good grade in the class, but like I don't know them super well, or should I pick like my boss? What do you think?
Always the person that you feel is going to give you a better one.
That's a
If you
good
already
question.
if you already have the first one, let's say you already have the first one, and you have a more personal connection with, say, your boss, because you work with them every day, they know your work ethic and they know what you do, and they can speak more personally to you, then do that one. Let's say
Okay,
it's,
cool.
yeah, so let's say for somebody else, if it's the reverse and they kind of just work with their boss, they don't really interact with them, they kind of just do the work and don't talk to them, but they have a good, meaningful conversation with their faculty, then you do that one. It's whoever you feel you have a more meaningful connection with that you want to prompt as the second person that you're going to do.
Okay, thank you. And I guess that also leads to another question, like, how long should you have known the person you're asking the letter for? Because like we're all pretty young, and like, so I guess it doesn't matter as much for us, but like,
yeah, like you're definitely not going to know them for 4 years because you just got
exactly.
there.
We just got here. I haven't been here that long.
Right. So for me, I asked for a letter of recommendation from the 5A teacher that I had. So that's first year. And I asked him for it that spring. So it had only been maybe 5 months that I knew him. And I already asked for a letter of rec. So you don't have to be afraid. And again, let's say you do it and you're too early, you don't know them for enough. They're just going to say no, and it's okay. You let it go.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So let's say if you're worried about, I don't have enough time that I've talked to them, or I don't have enough experience that I've shared with them, honestly, just try it. Just try it. And if they say no, totally fine. Not a problem. And yeah, again, you're not going to know them for more than, I guess at most you can know them is 4 years, but that'll be for like a grad application. You're not.
Yeah, and you're already leaving.
Yeah, I was like, at that point, you're not doing an REU.
I guess a couple months is probably fair.
Yeah. If you, I mean, the earliest that I think you could do is like, I'm about to finish your class in like a week or 2.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you, and that's about it. That's like the earliest. There's no longest. So don't feel bad about anything between that and then knowing them however many years after that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. To Allison's point, yeah. So usually people will tell you to do with the professor that you did well in their class. Again, in the experience of some of us, which is myself included, sometimes I didn't do so well in somebody's class. I started off rough. I had like a D and I moved it up to like a B-, and then with some begging a B flat, which is totally fine. Like as long as you showed that you had work ethic to get there and that you showed some kind of initiative there, totally fine. You don't have to worry about having an A+ in the class to consider that validation enough to ask them. Don't feel like that's a barrier. Let's see, Suling, any advice on reconnecting with old mentors, faculty that you did a project with but haven't contacted in a couple of years? Not to get a letter of English, not to get a letter of recommendation right now, but at least to reconnect and hopefully build a relationship. Okay, yes. So this is actually really important. Let me see how we're doing on time. So we have 15 minutes, that's fine. So is it okay if I come back to that question, Suling? Because I know it's important. Thank you. So I'm just going to get through these 2 other steps of the letter of rec process, and then I'll answer this because I do think that's really important. Okay, so once you have all the names that you think you can ask, we have a template again on that meeting page that literally just copy paste it. It has in brackets the things that you want to change so you'll never forget. So definitely change their name, definitely change how you know them, and definitely change what you think they could speak to. And from that, you just read it, make it sound like yourself, and email it. If you want to write it on your own, then basically you want to tell them how you knew them, how you connect with them. It's like, hey, I had you in this class, or hey, we met at this conference and we talked about your research, and then I did research with you, or something of that nature. Next, you want to say why you're emailing him in the first place. I'm emailing you because I'm interested in applying for this program, and I'd really like you to represent who I am in the application. I'd really like you to be my recommender. Again, there's a template there, but that's the gist of what you want to say. And once you do that, you also want to write, I'd like to meet with you so that I can talk more about the program and so I can talk more about why I think I'm a good fit for it. That way they don't just write something and then not give context to the application that you're doing. Now, once you've gotten the yes or no, if it's no, then move on. If it's yes, then have that meeting. Once you have that meeting, when you sit down, what you want to say is these 3 points. If it's about a class, then you talk about how well you did in the class and how you felt that you really liked the topic, or you felt you did a lot of work in spite of you not really liking the topic. Things like that. Those are both things that are fine. If they're a researcher you've done research with, it's here's the projects that I've done and here's how I think it relates to this other REU that I want to apply to. Or maybe they don't relate at all, but I still think that I'm a good fit because I've done hard work like this in the past. And another thing you want to tell them, which is the most important part, is why you want to go to that REU specifically. I want to go to this one because it's the type of area that I find most interesting. It's the one that I see myself doing after graduation. Whatever you want to tell them, you want to make that point really clear, because oftentimes they're going to telephone that point in their recommendation, and that'll only, give a backup to what you're saying in your application. Okay. So that's it. Now we'll answer Suling's question. We have 15 minutes left. If you're all good and you don't have any questions, don't worry about it, but I'll answer this one now. So a good point is that you always, with whoever professor that you take a letter of rec with now, or anybody that you feel you've connected with before in faculty or in professors, then you want to make sure that you constantly check up on them, like, hey, how you doing? Not constantly, like every day. Don't creep them out. Don't do nothing like that. But at least ask them every couple, whatever months. Maybe not months. Maybe like every other month, every quarter. Be like, hey, what are you up to now? How's the status of this project? You can keep it fairly professional if you don't feel comfortable asking them, hey, how are the kids? Then don't. That's not a problem. Don't do that if you guys don't know each other well. That'll be an awkward conversation. But yeah, try and keep in touch with them. Honestly, at minimum, maybe once a quarter if you want to keep them as a potential person for a recommendation. Try and keep up with them at least once a quarter. a meaningful conversation of how you're doing, how how are the classes that you're teaching right now, what's the research like that you're doing, are you looking at any interesting conferences coming up? And they might say, yes, I have one of those, and you're welcome to come, and then you can even further solidify that relationship. Yeah. But about reconnecting, honestly, I think just an email of, hey, we haven't talked in a while, but I want to see what's going on with you. Here's what's going on with me. Be the first person to share in that situation. Be the first person to share, like, here's what I'm up to, and I'm really excited about it. And, I'd like to hear more about you and the things you're doing. That way they feel like at least a teensy bit of obligation to respond because you've shared a little bit. So you're asking them to do the same back. And that's usually how you get these kind of back and forths. If you just said, hey, how you doing? They don't really feel, somebody answering emails doesn't really feel an obligation to answer because they haven't really been prompted anything. It's such a general topic. How are you doing? So you want to give them a specific question or something to get them into the conversation. Yeah. Was that about right, Suling, on what you wanted to ask? Yes. Okay. All right. Do you guys have any other questions about this process? Anything like that? If it wasn't covered here, you can tell me that too. If there's a question I didn't answer, then we can do this again. You can follow up if you need me to follow up, anything like that. Yeah, Tony?
Quick. Oh, sorry. Were you gonna say something?
No, it's okay. I don't know if Tony had something to say.
Oh, for the REU program, I didn't find a website specifically for UCSC.
Okay, so I can give you the link right now.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I can put it in there right now. Lillian, you were saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, that's okay. I had a kind of a follow-up question on the whole asking for letters of recommendation, and what you were saying about reaching out to the professor maybe at least once a quarter or something to maintain the relationship. But what if you know that the potential recommender kind of tends to not respond to emails right away or even at all if they're too busy, and you wonder, like, is it really worth it to ask them all these questions where they have to spend time answering them, or like, is it just better to update them maybe, or what do you think?
So I have a few follow-up questions to kind of make this a little more specific to you. So do you know the faculty from research or from a class?
From research.
Okay. Now, did they have research assistants or grad students, or was it just them?
You mean in the specific project I was working on?
No, it doesn't have to be specific. So if they work with any grad students or any undergrads also that work with them, is that the case with this person?
Yeah.
Okay, so then a good thing to do is that you can, if you don't have contact with them right now or not consistent contact, then you can ask to jump on one of these meetings that they might have. Sometimes they'll have a one-on-one with their grad. If they don't, which is fine, I'll tell you what to do right now, because my own research advisor doesn't really meet with us that often either. She's so busy. Yeah, that sounds weird, but I'll explain it later. But yeah, so if the first case is that they do meet with their grad students, undergrads, at least occasionally, ask if you can jump in on both sides. Ask them if you can jump in, hear what's going on so that you can hear that update about what they're doing. And then jump in about, hey, I'm talking to you face to face. Do you mind meeting me some other date? That way you can ask them face to face and know that they heard that message. That way they feel a little more responsive to getting those emails or to setting something up.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Thanks.
You can take an absolutely aggressive approach too, which I've done with mild success, which is also like, here's a Google event calendar. You've been invited. If you want to reject me by straight up saying no, go for it. If you want to not answer, go for it. But it goes up on their calendar, it goes up on their email, and it goes up on their secondary email if they have one. That, like, Google pushes those things to you all the time. So that's the most aggressive thing you can do if you already know them. Preferably only if you already know them. But yeah, that's another option.
Okay.
Yeah. Jenna? Hi.
Hi, I just wanted to contribute just a couple tips, I guess. I've applied to a couple graduate programs already, and I'm also applying to REU, so I'm kind of in a weird place. But I think that a good thing to do if you have questions, I think Ava, you had a question about a recommender being appropriate. If there's a contact listed for an application, just email them and ask them. They will definitely answer you and sometimes even give you a tip that you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't asked that question. So it could be a jumping off point, or they can say, actually, yeah, this is better for you to say or do or what have you. So a lot of times they have inside information that it can be helpful. So you're not alone where you are. You know, a lot of people are in the same boat as you, where they don't maybe have a lot of experience, just started school. So you're not alone. I mean, they expect that people like you will apply that maybe don't have these humongously long relationships with people working in research. So don't feel like you're not in the right place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, so if you're wondering how you actually talk to those people, how you used to do it is that you go to a conference and just kind of corner them and be like, hey, do you have a second to talk? I heard you're the chair for this program. And you kind of just talk to them. But that's a little bit harder now. But yeah, feel free to email them, feel to do whatever it deems necessary to contact them and ask them those questions. I put the link for one REU that we have, which is the Sustainable Materials REU, but we do also have an astronomy boot camp, I think, that they do every single year. I will have to look for that one a bit more and update you guys, but there's this one that I know about. Was there any other questions that I could answer?
I had a
Yes.
quick question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, does somebody else have a question?
Rua, but Rua, do you?
You can go first.
Okay, thank you.
So I was just curious. So I changed majors from, like I was studying something else before physics. Would it be a bad idea to get a letter of recommendation from somebody that is unrelated to the field, because they would have no, I mean, they would be able to write, something good about me, but I don't know how well they'd be able to relate my skills to, what I'm potentially trying to do with the REU. But they might be able to, they would be able to relate to me more than, let's say, a professor that I know, took last semester. I mean.
So again, a few follow-up questions to make it more specific. I honestly hate it when presenters do general answers, but specific to you. So is the person that you had in the other field, was it a professor or somebody you did research with?
So this was actually way back in high school.
Okay.
I was doing volunteer work for restorative resources. It was like an alternative disciplinary approach. It was called restorative justice, and I organized a student group, and we held talks. We created a club at the high school, and we were pretty heavily involved with the community, and we got a pilot program implemented into one of the elementary school or middle schools. So my mentor, I worked very closely with him, so he knows me very, very well. So he would, be able to, I guess, write something about me. Whereas, like I said, comparing to a professor that I, might barely know, that I met last semester.
Right. So
I mean, that's the background.
Okay, that helps a lot. So if you have the option again on an REU where you have two sections, include him. That's fine. Include him. But do work to have the one from your field as well.
Right.
If you have just the one, actually, I don't know if that's usually. If it has just one, then ask me again. But I think for now, it's fine to do two. Okay. Rua, did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi. First off, thank you, Alberto and Allison and Suling, for putting this on and inviting folks from Cabrillo. Just really appreciate being included and having, your expertise. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you for coming.
My question is, I have absolutely no research experience. So when thinking about writing a CV, it's going to be really short.
Yeah.
And I have lots of life experience. Like I have a degree in literature. I've worked in the arts. I've, worked in education. But is it worth including any of that and trying to like spin it to how it would make me great in the lab? Or I don't know if there's like room for that kind of narrative in a CV. So yeah, I'm kind of at a loss of like, how do you?
Yeah. So the CV, when they review it, because a lot of this information is after talking to reviewers. That's how we kind of field these questions and this information. And from what they've said is that the CV is not a physics CV or a physics only CV or only this specific type of research CV. If it's anything to do with your academics, if you finish your degree, put it on there. If you finished, I guess lab work is different, which is more of like, here's some papers that I've written and here's how they contributed to the narrative of this specific field. Go for it, put it in there. If the publication was only for a class and not on any major publication, put it on there. You took the course, you wrote this thing, you contributed a great deal of time and effort, and that's okay. I think that's totally fine to put on there because you put in work.
Even if it's not physics
Yes,
specific. Okay.
that's totally fine. And some people, so we've had those who go from a philosophy degree and then jump into a grad school degree in physics. So
whoa, I want to know how they did that.
Yeah, so don't worry about that. Don't worry about feeling like, this work isn't as rigorous or it's not like, screw that. To be quite frank, like you did a great deal of work and you've done, some meaningful work. Even if it's not pertinent to the field, or it doesn't feel pertinent, remember that to be an effective researcher, you have to communicate what you're doing, or else nobody's going to know what you did and nobody's going to care. If it's just written in absolute gibberish and nobody can hear what you're saying. I've read a bunch of papers from researchers. I don't care what they did. It might have been the most amazing thing ever, but I don't know what happened. And I can't replicate what they did because it's gibberish. So that's totally fine. You can put that on there, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Ava, second round.
Yeah.
What's up?
It just reminded me of a question that I had too. So like, even on that same vein, is it possible to talk too much about like something you've done in research? I remember last year someone told me that if you talk about research too much, they'll be like, oh, you don't need this experience, or yeah. And I don't know if it's true or not.
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
So it's true that if they get a whole lot of applications and they see that you or somebody else who has never done research is up for the position, that might happen. But oftentimes in those cases, if you do get that happening, like let's say you do the REU, you have a bunch of experience in research and they say no. You follow up with them and you say, hey, is it because you wanted to give it to somebody else who hasn't done it and maybe I wasn't a right fit for this? And they say, you know what, that was something that we saw and considered. Then you know what, just reach out to the faculty who are running the REU period and say like, hey, can I just be your intern for this much? I obviously have research experience and I can obviously contribute.
A paid intern, maybe.
Just circumvent it if you feel that's the case. It's a very good position to be in, to say I'm overqualified to be.
No, that sounds horrible, Alberto. I don't want to be a jerk. It's not true anyway.
No, it's not. See, that's the problem. You want to tell them.
Yeah, because,
yeah. So in those cases where you feel like you don't want to shun away from all the work you did because it's worth showing it to say that you are a good fit for this place, and you could send it off to somebody else if they said no. So I don't think you should lie in the point of I didn't do research at all.
It wouldn't be a lie. It would just be a suppression of
lie by omission.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Yeah, see, just like that, just like Jenna, it's hard because people do see that, but you want to talk to other people and see those who are willing. Any other questions before we conclude our time? We're a little bit over, but I don't think anybody's angry about 2 minutes.
Can I just say something about Ava's point too?
Yeah.
Ava, if you do have a lot of research experience, I would definitely highlight that, because sometimes some of the REUs want people who haven't had a lot of research experience, but sometimes they're also really stoked on people who actually have been in the field and know what it's like to be out there, because that isn't always something you can teach. So something can look great on paper, right? Another person that's applying can look totally like a perfect fit on paper, but you have actually been in the field. I don't know what that means to you. I'm an ocean scientist, so it's a little different, or ocean science student. So, but me saying like, I know how to fail in the field and not like totally lose it is a huge, that's a huge help for somebody looking at my application. So always play it, like you said, like spin it to positive,
Yeah, and if you guys, I don't know how many of you actually have access to a grad advisor or a okay. All right, let's just do this poll. It's okay if nobody does it. I just want to know. So if you have access to a grad advisor that you feel you can talk to, put a thumbs up. Okay. If you have an REU professor who's doing an REU and you have access to them, put a thumbs up. Okay, see, that's a fair point. It's hard. Oh, there's one. There you go. So it's hard. It's a fair point. So maybe if you still feel like that's not a resource you can use, maybe we can compile one for you. Maybe we can reach out to somebody and get you guys to talk to them if you really want to. But yeah, for now, if there's no other questions, I can conclude it and you guys can go rest.
I have some points to add at the end, and
Yeah.
you guys can leave if you want. So
Yes.
I am sending in the chat a list of names and resources and you can use. More specifically, we started this session talking about CVs and REUs. The UCSC Career Center has a lot of information about it. Some school resources like STEM Diversity, EOP, or STARS have workshops specifically about this. And they have a writing tutor for STEM students because they know we don't practice our writing skills very often. And her name is Jessie Lopez. And I think all UCSC students are allowed to email them. I don't think why career students couldn't.
I don't think they'd turn you away, to be honest.
Exactly.
I don't think they'd be like, get out of my get out of my virtual office.
A couple of other things I mentioned is the research opportunities that UCSC offers. We have the STEM diversity that has like a summer program. We have LAMAT, which is specifically for community college students that want to do research in astrophysics. And Professor Raja has a science internship program, but I think that one's more for high school students, but I don't know. And finally, someone asked about poster, like, oh, Alberto, you pointed out that you can mention if you have presented a poster and then you should look for those opportunities.
Yeah.
So QWeb is one option that is yearly. And this year I learned about Suru from the START program that I had never heard before, but apparently they've done it for 15 years. And they just let any undergraduate student present their research in a gigantic symposium. So yeah, there it goes. And finally, final announcement. There is one more event to the series that's actually organized by Lillian. Next week we're going to have a Q&A about REU experiences. So come next week. It's on Tuesday, the 19th at 5 p.m. Just to hear like other people's experiences in REUs. How is it? And if you have had any experiences that you would like to talk about, please contact Lillian, and if you know other people, let them know.
Yeah. Thank you, Sully.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna end it here if there's no other questions. Have a good one, guys. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you.
Much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, guys, have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
So just for Allison and Suling, I need y'all to do work now. Woo!
What do you mean?
All right. Oh, son of a.